So today I'm here with Rochelle, who I worked with. How long ago is it now, Rochelle? Is it like a
Almost a year and a half, I would say.
year and a
Over a
half?
year. Yes.
Amazing. So Rochelle came to me with PMDD and we had 2 months together. And I'm going to ask Rochelle a few questions about where she was, what it was like to be you before we started this work together.
Mhm.
What was it
I
like?
was diagnosed with PMDD probably over 15 years ago, which was at a time where we didn't have smartphones. There was no information. If you Googled PMDD, nothing came up. So I just happened to have a family doctor who was ahead of the curve. And I was talking about this intense rage that would overcome me every month on day 21 of my cycle. And she started to ask some questions and do some digging, and she diagnosed me before anybody was talking about it. So at that time in my life, I was absolutely consumed with rage and anxiety and depression. I was not functioning for at least half of the month. And I have memories, even just from a couple of years ago, where I would be sitting in my living room, just staring at the back of my front door, literally for 5 or 6 hours, trying to figure out a way that I would be able to work through my anxiety and leave the house simply to walk down the street and pick up my children from school. It was that intense. And there were other times in my month where I would not be able to get out of bed for days with depression, just completely being consumed with intrusive thoughts that my children would be better off without me. Um, I had a lot of invasive suicidal ideation and yeah, depression, anxiety, rage. And I was just being triggered constantly and emotionally dysregulated for at least half of the month.
Wow. Yeah, you had
Yeah,
it bad. So
it
what had
was
you tried
it.
before?
Yeah, honestly, it was absolutely debilitating. It really,
Has
really
it?
was.
5 or 6 hours staring at the door, working out. I mean, I've been
Yeah,
there, the rumination where hours and hours just go by with this depression where you're just, that's how I spent my teens and my 20s, just like
yes. Just not being able to function,
not,
not
e-
being able to
not being able to
parent.
pick up my tea and bring it to my mouth, just staring
Yeah,
at it for
yeah.
hours.
And also just like all of the guilt and shame that comes with that,
Mm.
just feeling like I wasn't able to be available for my children for at least half of the month. Um, and just feeling like I was failing in every aspect of my life as a parent. I was missing time off of work. Yeah, it was honestly really, really debilitating. And I felt like it was a death sentence. So yeah, you asked what did I try? So at that time, like I mentioned, no one was talking about it. There was one book on Amazon that I purchased about how to manage PMDD, and I tried every supplement in that book. I did my own experiments. I had my own charts and spreadsheets, and I would try different supplements every month and play with that. I did take a couple of different antidepressants. I took a couple of different birth control pills, which were terrible because my body does not like progesterone and is very sensitive to that. So those um, those treatments actually made PMDD worse. I felt worse on antidepressants because I felt so numb and dissociated that any kind of coping strategies that I had developed to manage the PMDD symptoms, I wasn't able to access them because I was just so disconnected
Yeah, that's
from
really common
myself. And
actually. And people say that I just want to get off these antidepressants, the
it was
medication.
awful. Yeah, it made it worse because I was just
It-
a zombie and numb and not able to cope even as well as I was without it. I would absolutely plan my life around my cycle. I would track my cycle. And so it was really interesting because half of my month I was experiencing all of these debilitating symptoms. And then the other half of the month I was spending dreading
Yeah.
the next phase of my cycle where I would be experiencing this. So I didn't even really have um, that any peace and stability, even in my, the spring and the summer of my cycle, because it's like, oh my God, next weekend, this is going to be my experience, and dreading what that was going to look like. Also, I'm in Canada, and I did a lot of research about hysterectomies are taking place in America and also in Europe and England as a treatment for PMDD. So I was like advocating for that. I was doing some research to get a hysterectomy, and diagnosed in my early 30s. So it was really honestly felt like a death sentence.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
how did you come across the RTT solution for the PMDD then? How did that all come about?
So just before I started working with you, I signed up for a PMDD summit that had a lot of different podcasts and master classes and information about PMDD. And so I heard about PMDD on a podcast, and I heard that people were saying that after an RTT session, they no longer had PMDD. Like it just didn't exist for them. They didn't have it. I actually have goosebumps right now, just even saying
Me
that.
too, because
Right. Yeah. No, I am having, like a physical reaction to that. Cause I remember I was walking, listening on my headphones to this podcast, and I heard, that PMDD didn't even exist after RTT. And I thought, I was just like, I was consumed with disbelief, because it felt like such a permanent, like I mentioned, death sentence. This was just it was part of my identity. Having PMDD was such an integral part of my identity. My kids knew I had PMDD. Any partner I had, like everyone knew that I had PMDD at that time. And therefore, I'm going to be out of commission for at least half of my adult life. So just this idea that I could at some point in my future not have PMDD is such a mix of emotion. It was fear, it was hope, it was disbelief. So I decided to move forward and booked RTT sessions with you, moving forward with a maybe, and moving forward with that hope that maybe this could work for me. I'm hearing all of this evidence from different women that it had been effective. So let's see what it can do for me.
And how did you find the program, like working together? How did you find it? So I remember with you, it was like the depression just, I think after the first session, just when you were like, I no longer have it.
Yeah.
It was, what was it like those weeks of doing the RTT?
I am very fortunate, I think, in that I had instant results after my first session with you. And I had absolute instant results. It was so powerful and so transformative. That month, I did not have PMDD symptoms. And so my results were instant, but they're also cumulative, because it is a process, and it is a journey, right? And rewiring our thoughts, it kind of continues over time. And then we had a second session to address some of the other symptoms that I was having. But yeah, when we first met, it was the depression that was the most significant for me, and that I was spending days in bed, and I was just absolutely not functioning, and I was having a lot of suicidal, intrusive thoughts at that time. And so, the biggest shift that I have noticed after working with you, Chloe, is the way that I speak to myself. Before I worked with you, my thoughts were tormenting me, bullying me, torturing me even, right? Just having these constant thoughts. And after working with you, the way that I speak to myself is just so significantly different, in that my thoughts are so kind and loving and encouraging. That is the biggest shift that I have noticed, right? Like my thoughts have actually been rewired. And it's really interesting. Even more than a year later now, since I've worked with you, I still sometimes, when I'm having different emotions and different struggles, I hear your words, and I hear, like, because I was so diligent in listening to my recording, right? Obviously, I wanted to give my all to the process and to this treatment. And I still listen to the recording that you made for me from time to time if I just need a little, relaxation. And so those words, and it's quick, right? Like, even if a negative thought starts to creep in, it, like, my mind, without even thinking, without any effort, that thought is replaced and has been rewired, which is just like, I didn't even know what to expect really with the RTT sessions, but that's what I've noticed the most, is the way that I speak to myself. And when we start speaking to ourselves with such love, our entire experience shifts. Right. And for most of my adult life, well, I would say even my childhood and my teenage life as well, pretty much my whole entire life, I was so emotional, dysregulated, and I didn't even know what the feeling of emotional regulation was like. Wasn't able to create that for myself, let alone help my children to be emotionally regulated, right? So I've noticed such a shift as well with my children and with the way that I'm parenting, because I'm able to not have the PMD symptoms and not have, kind of that emotional chaos and the rage and the irritability and the depression. That I'm able to be emotionally regulated, my children are being raised in an environment that feels more safe and loving and stable. So that has been a huge shift. And then I guess the last shift, right? Which is, and that's the most important thing to me.
That's
like
it's
the greatest. Like, being a parent and being a mother and creating a safe, loving home for them is my top priority in life, for sure. And then another thing that has shifted so significantly is I don't track my cycle. I input my period on my tracker, right, just to kind of have an idea. But I never look at it. I am never like, oh my God, tomorrow's day 21, I can't possibly go out for dinner with friends. Like, I don't track my cycle. I don't turn down invitations. I don't, I work whenever work comes my way. So that's a huge shift as well.
It's
my
a
whole
big deal.
Was a calendar.
Your whole life was planned around that.
My
and that's the,
whole
I
life
don't
was,
track my cycle either. Yeah.
Pardon?
It's, I don't track my cycle either. And I think that's what
no, I
most
don't anymore.
people are surprised to hear, actually, is like, what? Like, because you're just, like you say, you're fearing it all the time.
Yes.
It's arrival, but it's like, well, what? It's not even here anymore.
Yes, exactly. Which is just so, like, liberating. It's completely liberating.
And I know exactly what you're saying about this self-talk, because I constantly go, but why like we should be taught this in schools. That is the biggest game changer, the way we speak to ourselves. And this treatment really is like a radical awakening, isn't it? Like bringing back to you, like bringing you back into this soul alignment.
I feel like I am now living as the person that I was always meant to be.
Yeah,
right? Before the trauma, before, I feel like more like myself than I ever have. I feel like I had little tastes and snippets of that, but I wasn't able to be consistent.
Yeah. So tell me, since the treatment, you've overcome all this depression and the PMDD and everything, and you're your own cheerleader. How is your life? Because people come and do this work because I want to be free from depression. I want to be free from PMDD. What they don't know when they come out is they get much more than freedom from a disease. So I want to know about how your life is now since this freedom. What's happened?
Yeah, well, I feel like over the past year and a half since working with you, my life has shifted and transformed in every possible way. Like I mentioned, just the home that I'm able to create, the way that I'm parenting, the way that I'm feeling about myself. It was very interesting that the first RTT session that I had with you was the starting point of a significant journey of healing for me. And it wasn't too long after I had that first session with you that I realized that I was at that time in a toxic, narcissistic, abusive relationship. And it wasn't long, it was such a short period of time that relationship started to fall apart and end, because I was respecting myself differently, and just my whole perception what started to shift. And as that relationship ended, I started to have the insight that I actually have a very long history of being in narcissistic abusive relationships, and that I did experience that kind of abuse in my childhood and my teenage home. And, it was very interesting because, now that I look back at the work that we did together during the RTT sessions, pretty much all of the scenes that I went back to showed me not feeling safe as a child, and me not getting what I needed emotionally as a child. And there's just something so magical and so beautiful, Chloe, about the way that you guided me in a state of relaxation back to those childhood scenes, where I was able to look at them through my adult eyes and have a better understanding of, some of these experiences that led to the symptoms of PMDD that I was experiencing. And not only having the insight, but also being able to just take that childhood version of myself and love her and accept her and keep her safe and bring her into who I am today as an adult, and just being able to kind of incorporate her into my world and into myself. And so all of that healing of all of that trauma and, all of that abuse has been absolutely life-changing for me. And I have the insight and the awareness and my path. You have been such an integral part of this healing journey and the awareness that I have. And I don't know that I would have had that without the work that we did together. Honestly, it's been life-changing.
So before you did that subconscious work, had you been aware that you hadn't felt safe in your childhood?
Not really. So I think instinctually, I think that as women, I think we, if we actually listen to that inner voice and that intuition, we know, right? We know that something isn't healthy. We know that something is toxic. But what do I know? I have a mental illness. I have PMDD. I'm erratic. I'm, what are all of these ideas that we have about ourselves, this dialogue we have with ourselves, and this idea that, what do I know? I probably have a personality disorder. I have all of these mental illnesses. I've had to take antidepressants, and probably what I'm picking up on in my intuition, I probably shouldn't listen to my intuition because I have PMDD. That's what I believed. So I pushed that down and I numbed that, right? I numbed that with medication. I numbed that with repressing my inner voice, because those PMDD symptoms were just so significant in my life. And so just once the PMDD was gone and that was healed, then that's when I really got my first taste of what it felt like to be safe and listen to that inner voice and respect myself. And just all of that healing led to, and you're right, I think healing trauma is very much like layers of an onion, where, right, you take off that one layer and okay, the PMDD was healed. So I was having a little taste of safety and a little bit of emotional regulation and that self-love. And then, okay, and then my soul knew that I'm ready for this next layer, right?
Yeah.
So, okay, let's look at this and have this kind of insight, right? Yeah. But honestly, if you asked me a year and a half ago, if I had ever been in an abusive relationship, I would have said no.
Wow.
I would have said no. Right. I took full responsibility and that's often what happens in a toxic relationship, is they blame you, they manipulate you, and you're the crazy one. You have this diagnosis. Look at you. You can't even manage your anger. right? And then that becomes your beliefs. And when you have these imprints and these beliefs so early in childhood, right, then as
Oh,
a grown woman, you believe that about yourself. So yeah, these beliefs, and honestly, I've had all of my medical professionals take PMDD off of my list of diagnosis. I just recently met my physiotherapist. She's like, how's the PMDD? I said, no, I don't have PMDD. You can remove that from my file. And I would have never been able to even think about saying that a year. I would have had so much anxiety. I had so much attachment to the diagnosis,
15 years
right?
of living with it.
So, and
So
that's the accumulated healing, right? I had the instant results with you where, I was, instead of I was feeling safe, I was feeling self-love. That thought was, there was instant results, but then that accumulation of even just moving away from the diagnosis and what that meant for who I was and my identity
yeah.
has been
And it's
powerful.
very powerful, and I'm so
Yeah.
proud of you. I'm so happy for you
Thank
because
you.
this has not only freed you from this pattern of toxic relationships, which is actually how, I've been working with depression because of my medical background, depression, PMDD, but now I'm more and more and more working with narcissistic relationships, women who want to break free
Mhm.
from that pattern. But I think I'm not the only one going into this because your life purpose has also changed since we started
Yes.
working. This has been so effective for you. So
Yeah.
tell me now where
Okay.
you're at with your
Oh,
career.
okay, great. Sure. Um, yeah, so I mean, the RTT sessions I had with you and the healing that I experienced was so powerful and so transformative that I have decided to become an RTT therapist myself. So I just recently graduated. So I completed the training and to be a rapid transformational therapy practitioner. And so I'm going to take like all of this amazing work that we did together and continue to kind of spread the healing for women who have who are being called to heal the relationship with themselves after narcissistic abuse and PMDD. And I think that RTT is so effective. I think it's effective for a lot of different things because the mind is just so incredibly powerful. But I think it's particularly effective for women who have a diagnosis of PMDD because those are the women that are designed to be sensitive, right? I think I know I can speak for myself anyways. I'm very, right, like women with PMDD are often the artists and the healers and those that are very designed sensitively to the hormonal shifts through the cycle. And so we're more receptive to suggestion, and the suggestions that we receive in a state of relaxation, which we experience in an RTT session, is even more, profound and life changing. I think that's been my experience. And
I
also,
absolutely.
right, I think, yeah, and that's what I've been seeing talking to other women as well. And honestly, Chloe, like, I know, like, there's so much dialogue about PMDD with social media and all of these women, coming forward and doing this work, but it is so pervasive. Everyone I talk, like so many women that I talk to, be like, oh yeah, I'm making a career change and this is what I'm doing and this has been my experience. I had PMDD and it was debilitating and now this is, what life is feeling like for me. I am astonished at how many women say, oh, I have a diagnosis of PMDD.
It's
So like it's
incredible.
just so pervasive and so common, right? So which is almost been like a little bit eye-opening for me. And I would also say that because we're so sensitive, this trauma that we experience in childhood really does impact us,
Yeah. And you were
right?
saying earlier about the lack of not trusting the intuition, because it's not
Yes,
only, we talk a lot about self-love, but really it's this disconnection to the intuition, the lack of self-trust as well. And both of them,
yes,
when you start really trusting and we rewire your mind to trust it, because nobody can know what's best for you better than you, but we
yes,
we surrender, don't we? We hand over our power and we allow other people to know what's best for us. And this is how we end up in the toxic relationships, which is why it's very, very common to have this trauma and be suffering with these diseases, and also have experience of being in toxic relationships. Like I had a client, he said, well, through working with you, I've just realized my mother was a narcissist. That's very common. We don't
Yes, it
realize.
is. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it's just because like when the focus is off of the diagnosis and off of the symptoms, we have the space, right? We have the mental and emotional space to start processing.
Yeah.
Right. And the subconscious starts to work and
Clarity.
that's
You just
the experience that I had
clarity.
with you. Yeah. Right. Is like now my subconscious is like was able to go back and see some of those things and those pivotal moments that my subconscious brought as the root cause of the PMDD and depression and anxiety and rage. And then the subconscious mind is kind of continuing to do that work behind the scenes. And I think that's why it's very common where people are like, oh, right. Like, because when the brain is rewired, then it's just, we have more insight. Right. And I think also like as women, we are living in a world where women have not been socialized to stand in their power. Right. There is a lot of patriarchal conditioning for millennia. So that's, some interesting work as well. Just that women do have a cycle and that's okay. And our society is not structured very well to support a cyclic experience, right? And it's very normal for all women to go through different seasons of their cycle. And I still go through different seasons of my cycle and I can hold space, but I don't consider that to be PMDD. That's me being a healthy, normal woman.
Needs,
right?
And that's the thing. It's, like you say, the society is not built for us to stand in our power, meet our needs, speak up, say what we want. And for me, now I've worked with so much mental health issues, so much of this stuff. And now I just go, but it doesn't matter what label you put on it. For me, it's just a calling to heal so that you can realign, you can step into your soul purpose and start learning to honor your needs. Like, do this work, learn these lessons, do the reprogramming, and just give yourself permission to be you, more of you all the time. And explore yourself and learn what you like, because we get to a point as women where we've given and given and given, and that's a really masculine energy, giving, doing. That we don't even know what we like anymore or what we've come here for. I remember feeling like that. What's the point in life? What have I come here for? And so doing this, like all of these horrible feelings and emotions and diseases that come up for us, they're just a calling because we're meant for more, actually. And it's like just getting louder and louder and louder until you address it at its root cause, and then back in alignment, and you're listening and you're attuned to your needs and you're able to meet them, and you see, I live in a world of choice, actually. And I think for me that was the biggest thing with the subconscious work, because we're so like this with the childhood programming that we acquired, that suddenly it's like, wow, I've got this child now and we have so much choice. What we're going to do? Oh, we're going to let him go because he's not very nice to me, and I'm going to do something else that I love to do what I love and love what I do. And you're not the first to go and study RTT. I've worked with doctors, nurses that go and do art, that go and study this stuff, because they realize actually doing what they're doing, they're not getting to the root cause. And they are the carers, like you say, they're the sensitive carers of the world that, of course, are more susceptible to trauma because they are. And we've also learned as sensitive people that it's not good to be sensitive. So it's like this reconnection. Oh my God, this is my superpower. My sensitivity is my superpower. And I've got to reconnect to the intuition.
And all the stigma around women being too emotional, right? Or, oh, she must be on her period, or like just all of those societal messages that we receive. it's amazing that so many women now are doing the work in this field to kind of start to shift that and break that pattern. So, which is amazing for ourselves that we're able to, you know, spend the rest of our life having healed the trauma, and also for our children, for for
I
our
often
daughters
say
and
that
our sons. And
the greatest gift we can give our children, and I
yes,
often think, lucky you are. You know, I've got very, very sensitive, one of my children, hypersensitive, and I just think, God, you're so lucky that you have me, because, you know, a generation back, you've got stop crying or I'll give you something to cry about. And
absolutely.
such a
And I
gift to
love
be.
the work that you're doing with parenting. Like, it's very inspiring. My kids are a little bit older and that's not my niche, but I really admire and like appreciate the work that you're doing with that, with parenting. It's really important.
I think it kind of goes hand in hand with what we do, right? Because so much of the work is inner child work. So you learn so much about the importance of conscious parenting. And actually, this was my entry point, was
Mhm.
the parenting guru, Dr. Shefali. That's how I got into this whole conscious world and started to kind of question things, you know? But
Mhm. It's interesting how like all of our pasts, like it's interesting how so many different experiences can help us to align with our path, and that's so unique
I
for
know
each of
it's so,
us.
it was
Yeah,
like, oh, it was always there. Now I look back, but I
yeah,
wasn't waking up to it. It was like, you know, as psychotherapist saying to me, you should be a therapist, you should be a psychotherapist. And just all these weird things, like the hypnotherapist saying something to me, and it never hit me. It never hit
right.
me until I
But
was in a
that's
position.
actually source giving you the message
Yeah,
over and over again until you
listen,
listen, right? Yeah.
this is what we
And
do.
you're like,
Now I get
okay, I got it.
it. Now I'm tuned in, but I didn't know what I wasn't listening to before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
So
that's
you,
been my experience too. Like I kept having these, you know, the thing they say about life giving you the same lesson over and over again until you get it. I'm like, okay, I've got it. Right. Like once you start to listen, like you said, you
and
listen
I
to our inner
love
voice.
how this work is so scientific, because I am a complete
Yes.
scientific nerd. So scientific, but also so
Yeah.
spiritual. So it's so
Absolutely.
holistic. You know, we've got
Yes.
freedom from physical symptoms, the mental well-being. Just, oh, it's
An
heaven, isn't
RTT session is very much a spiritual experience.
it? It is,
For
isn't it?
me, that's what, like it was a spiritual experience for me. That was just, I don't think I could have had any other way.
Yeah.
And like you said, hypnosis there is evidence based that it is effective in rewiring neural pathways. So like it does absolutely work.
Covers everything, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Rochelle, for coming and talking to me a year and a half down the line. It's great to see
Yes.
that it's so effective, you know, and long lasting, because that's also a thing that people, you know,
Oh,
all this love.
absolutely. Yeah.
I think once
And
you've
then
had this
and the
on,
thing is, like, when more things come up as you start to heal, you can just have another session, right? To keep addressing, like, the healing is never done in our life journey.
yeah,
Right? We can just
exactly.
keep healing each layer
I think
with more sessions.
once you get this, and a strong emotion comes up that you can't shift consciously, you just go,
Mhm.
well, there's the next level of growth, right? Because
Exactly.
it's like your sixth sense. It's like, oh, there's something here, there's something that I need to heal in order to expand my consciousness. And just, it's a different way of being in the world, and it's a beautiful way of being in the world. So
Mhm.
I'm so grateful that you've come here today with your beautiful story and your ah, new career starting out.
Yes, I'm very excited.
My
Yeah.
colleague, from patient to colleague. Woohoo!
Yes. Yay. That is exciting.
Thank
And thank
you
you
so
for all the work and all the difference that you're making in the world, and
much.
for choosing to listen to that voice and to your calling, and doing this work, because it has absolutely changed my experience and my path.
Thank you, Rochelle.
Thank you.
I'll stop recording now.
Mhm.